Hi, today I wanted to talk a little bit about fish that are picky eaters. For the most part, most fish, if they're hungry, they're going to eat. So you really don't have to worry about them not eating. For a lot of species, especially community fish, if your fish has stopped eating, it generally is sick, and so you got to figure out what's wrong with them before you can get them eating again. Guppies, betas, mollies, if you feed them enough, they practically will eat themselves to death. But I have right now a discus pair that has been trying to play a game of chicken with me for the last little while about what they're going to eat. It's really my fault because I put them in a tank that I had some Neocardinia culls in, and so I was like, okay, if they eat them, that's fine. They were going to be sold to just somebody for a really little amount of money because they weren't really colorful and not worth trying to breed. So I was like, cool, they can eat those. Well, they were brand new to my tank. I got them from my uncle, and they got used to eating those cherry shrimp that were in my tank, and so they decided to go on a hunger strike. This hunger strike has been going on for about a month now, which has been really aggravating. And so I finally convinced them the last few days to actually eat something that wasn't a live cherry shrimp. So a lot of fish that are on the more expensive side or wild caught will hold out for something that they consider real food. I had a moray eel for a while, like a freshwater one, a tiger moray eel. Luckily, when I got him, he was eating defrosted frozen shrimps and bloodworms, so that was nice in that aspect. But they can be, I've had people tell me that their moray eel went months before they saw it eat. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how to entice fish to eat. So if your fish is not eating flake food, which is the normal, most common food that people give to their fish, just because it's the cheapest while having good nutrients and also is readily available almost anywhere. With picky fish, that's one of the first things that they refuse to eat is flake food. One thing that I like to do is get a pellet that has a lot of like oily, meaty proteins in it. Fish that even aren't supposed to eat protein on a regular basis will go after anything that has like a really strong meat flavor to it. So you can try a pellet that has a little bit more, I don't know if stench is the right word, but we'll go with that. But if that doesn't work, my go-to is always going, let's go find a frozen food that they try to like. Depending on the fish, frozen bloodworms are always great. Frozen mysis shrimp, frozen brine shrimp are all great options depending on how big your fish's mouth is. If they're really small fish, brine shrimp is what I'd suggest. If they're medium size, mysis shrimp or bloodworms would both work. And on the bigger side, you could try all the way up to like a frozen food, like a human food, like a raw shrimp. Well, a defrosted, uncooked shrimp is what I'm meaning. If that doesn't work, then I always move to live foods if you're trying to get a fish to eat, especially if it's brand new to you. You can always go with, depending on the size, raw, cherry shrimp are a great option. Some people will use other small feeder fish like guppies. If you're having like a big, like maybe a peacock bass, and you're trying to entice it to eat something. If the fish is about medium size, they sell, lots of pet stores sell blackworms, live blackworms, which is always a great option. If your fish are really small, freshly hatched brine shrimp are a great option, or like really small bugs like flightless flightless fruit flies is another good one to use. I found the biggest thing is a variety of food is what, and just trying to go through those steps to get them to eat. And obviously you don't want to give them exactly what they want every time, but if you're getting to that phase where you're like, okay, they really need to eat something, then I try to spoil them a little bit. But you want to slowly work down to feeding them the food that you're wanting to feed them. For me, my goal is to have all my fish eating flake and pellets, with a few exceptions, like my stingray. He gets defrosted frozen raw shrimp because he just needs that much protein to sustain himself. I mean, he does eat flake food and pellets, but for the most part, it's not enough to sustain him. But a lot of it is just patience and just trying until you find something that works well for them. It's also important to remember that lots of times with fish, when you're trying to get them to eat something, you will most likely overfeed them, or they won't eat any of the food, so it'll be sitting in their tank, and so you'll want to remove that food. You don't need to remove it immediately after you feed them and they don't go after it. I noticed that with my discus, after a few weeks, they start picking food up off the ground after a few hours of it sitting in the tank. So don't immediately remove it, but be conscious of how long it's been in the tank. And I would say if you're feeding them in the morning, by the time it's time to put your tanks to bed and go to sleep, if there's still food floating around, I would scoop it out, do a few more water changes if you've got a lot of food sitting in there for a lot of time. Also, certain foods are going to be a lot more toxic by producing ammonia, so it's always good to be conscious of that. But with the added ammonia and nitrates in the tank, that can stress your fish out, which can cause them to eat less as it is. So you'll want to stay on top of that to make sure that the tank is in optimal condition so that your fish aren't stressed out and will want to eat. But yeah,